This video will contain Sigma shoulder pad size spoilers for Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2. If you'd like to avoid spoilers, then I'd suggest beating 2 of the best JRPGs out there, and then coming back to watch. If you have beaten these games or do not care about spoilers, then let's slap on our tinfoil hats and start speculating. The Bionis Shoulder, an absolutely beautiful location with its diverse landscape and fantastical setting, is something from the original Xenoblade Chronicles that hits all of the right notes for me. And yet, it's never seen an official release. Scrapped from Xenoblade Chronicles, the Bionis Shoulder has always held the title of the most discussed cut content among Xenoblade fans, which has led to plenty of speculation. The main reason being that the area is visible within the game data and can still be accessed to explore its extraordinary sights. I recently covered the history, layout, and the potential of the Bionis Shoulder, so I'd recommend checking that out if you'd like more information. However, the main subject I want to talk about is what might be the biggest secret of the Bionis Shoulder. Traveling across the shoulder will reveal an assortment of settlements and buildings that are completely unique, but with nothing attached to them. Since the shoulder was cut from the final product, there are absolutely no collectibles, enemies, or even NPCs to be seen, which leaves this absent land shrouded in mystery. Thus, the player is left with a tremendous question. Where did these various buildings come from, and who currently inhabits the Bionis Shoulder? To satiate my burgeoning curiosity, I wanted to go full theory mode and have a discussion about what beings from Xenoblade Chronicles could most likely be found residing in the urban sections of the Bionis Shoulder when the definitive edition eventually releases. Before getting started, I'd just like to clarify 3 quick things. First is that this theory will be working under the assumption that the Bionis Shoulder will be added as an area between Frontier Village and Arif Sea. This really doesn't change that much information, but it does cross off a notable group. Next is that we can look towards Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for support, but we're only examining species and races found in the original Xenoblade Chronicles. So people like the Urians and the Ardanians? Banned. Gogols though? They get a pass. Finally, this is pure speculation and theory crafting based off of information about the game in conjunction with my own thoughts. I could end up getting some things right, or just completely wrong, which... Yeah, that's more likely to happen. But my grade school gym teacher said that if you had fun, you won, and that's really all I care about. So let's get started by narrowing the field. One quick glance from the ensemble of creatures from Xenoblade Chronicles reveals, yikes, that's a lot to work with. But by looking at the architecture and general layout of these settlements, we can really cut out most of these beings. Across the Bionis, most of the standard creatures, with a few exceptions, usually just roam their respective habitat and don't exactly inhabit constructed settlements. While I wouldn't conclusively say that this notion makes these species unintelligent, it might be linked to a lack of higher intelligence that the major races display with their use of language, development of culture, and construction of architecture. Bunnets, Ponios, Flammies, all life forms like that I would wager are pretty safe cuts. Plus, I'm not trying to stroll onto the Bionis Shoulder full of innocent wonder, only to stumble across a city occupied by territorial Rotbart and his entire extended family. All level 81, by the way, that's important. So, geez, we're really not left with much here after that deep cut. However, there might be more than you'd think. We had the major Bionis and Mechonis races that play a role in the war or in your party, like the Homs, Nopon, Hyantia, and Machina. But we're also left with Giants, a race made extinct with the death of Arglist that has its history kept alive through its ruins, Telephia, another ancient race that is the true form of the Hyantia, and then this band of misfits composed of Chilkin, Turkin, Hode, Igna, Chromar, Mechon, and Gogols? Oh god, okay, maybe it is a city full of Rotbarts. Alright then, you know what? Put them back in the list. Although they are harmed by the Monado unlike the main races, the preeminent reason these 7 species are included is because they all exhibit some level of intelligence over your average Xenoblade creature, which is displayed through their ability to perform chain attacks. But unfortunately for Gogols, the ability to organize battle strategies is really all they have going for them. Groups like the Igna and Chromar show further intellect to the creation of unique armor and weapons that they utilize, and the presence around some semblance of settlement, but Gogols just kind of exist. Take them back off the list. For the next one, the Hyantia and Machina both fall in the same boat, with the latter violating my second stipulation. Although the story might be subject to small changes to accommodate for the shoulder and the connection between both of the numbered titles, the Machina and Hyantia's introductions are a big part of what establishes their existence in the narrative. The Machina are referred to as the people of the Mechonis and aren't introduced until late in the story at the Fallen Arm. I feel that placing them on the shoulder would strip away some of the significance of their debut and the sudden addition of complications for Shulk and the company's mission. As for the Hyantia, they are constantly mentioned by Dixon to have hidden themselves away on the Bionis head, after once controlling the region from Centauro Marsh and up. Furthermore, in the cutscene preceding the group's entry into Alchemoth, Shulk questions the identity of the Hyantian men that stand before him. Not to mention, the architecture on the shoulder found in the data files really does not match that of the modern Hyantia builds found in Satoral Marsh, Erevsea, or Alchemoth, with the exception of the Seal Tower. While we're at it, let's get the Mechon and Telefia out of the way, both of which seem very autonomous in nature. The Mechon also have builds in Sword Valley that do not match up in the slightest, and something about a Telefia settling down in a Snow White cottage doesn't sit right with me. With that, get him out of here.
Hold up, freeze frame. Are you forgetting something?
Wait, MonadoRudra?
I'm in control of your video now.
Alright, sure, but can we talk about...
While you did raise a good point in regards to the shoulder architecture, I believe that you may have overlooked an indirect detail. It may not match the Hyantia style, but its proximity to the capital city does hint at a connection. If the lower-level Homs colonies on the leg and the torso are explicitly unaware of their existence beyond being a myth, then where do the Hyantia go to get their consorts? My thought would be that it's actually a shoulder colony that happens to have been established in the territory of the Hyantia.
Oh, so it would fall between Coney 9 and 6.
Whoever actually lived on the shoulder would definitely be aware of their existence, given that you can very easily, see Alchemoth from there. That then could be where the consorts would originate from without alerting all of Lower Bionis. The Hyantian Empire once controlled most of Bionis itself before retreating to the higher levels, so it's plausible that they at least still nominally control all of that territory on Upper Bionis.
That's actually a riveting point I never really considered. Huh, I can't really argue with that, so while they might not be the main inhabitants, I'm willing to give them an award for landlord. Good job, Hyantia. Gold star. Following these four are the Chromar and Igna, bipedal lizard men that are equipped with both weaponry and armor. There are some differences between them, but they generally share similar attributes, with Chromar being restricted to Erevsea and Igna inhabiting Satoral Marsh. On top of the ability to perform chain attacks and perhaps construct equipment, they seem to take refuge in and around buildings like the Seal Towers in Erevsea or the Exiled Fortress in Satoral Marsh. So far, they're doing a great job of checking all the boxes for potential candidates. Nevertheless, this is when some of the final participants start to fail a requirement given the current information, which is the size test. The common Ignas are quite tall, even in comparison to Rhine, and the Chromars are absolute units. If you were to tell me that a Chromar would be living here, I'd be a bit hard-pressed to believe that. Additionally, we never see either species exhibit hospitable, commercial, or even written linguistic qualities like Homs do, which makes the existence of a marketplace quite odd. You hate to see it, but they're off the list. Oh, and also for the size argument are the giants, because they're giant. We're gonna have some wiggle room here, but let's map this out. The Machina Ego pits at the 5'6" Shulk to head level, still some room from the knees down. This put an Ego at around 8 feet tall, approximately 7'11". So with that knowledge and examining the screenshot from this flashback, we can see that Argus's height utterly eclipses him. That should be enough.
But we're going even deeper.
If we tip the top of Egel's head to his groin region and put it on Egel's current head, you get an almost perfect match to Argus's height. The region we just took is about 3'11" of Egel's height, so by adding the 7'11" from earlier in this new value, we can estimate that Argus is approximately 10'9". But it gets even worse! Xenoblade's heights aren't even consistent in cutscenes. I stacked 3 5'6" Shulks on top of each other, and they're still shorter than a hunched over Argus. So apparently Zanza juice running through your veins boosts your height by at least 50%. For my sake, the conclusion is 10'9". But that's just a theory to prove that this door is too small for giants. Okay, but to be honest, there have been theories that the giants might be responsible for the tower remnants we see on the Bionis Shoulder, since it echoes their other remaining architecture like the Exiled Fortress. I'm firmly willing to believe that, but I just don't see them being revived as a living race. I also think their almost mythical status plays a lot into the lore of the Bionis and Zanza's reveal at Prison Island. So then there's Chokin, which are native to the snowy region of Valak Mountain, so we can axe them. However, their more commonplace counterpart is a very interesting prospect. In Xenoblade Chronicles, Turken are merely restricted to the role of an enemy sporting a high level of intelligence. They're even the target for Monster Quest Free Part 2 for the Bionis Leg, with the wording on the description saying, "Bring the population down." Holy shit, that is horrible. So, Xenoblade Chronicles doesn't exactly give them much of any reason, but what about the sequel? In Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Turken are regarded as one of Alres's many races, and even work in urban settings along with the more humanoid species. Probably their most notable appearance is as the group of world-famous chefs Fire Dragons, which ends in a big misunderstanding. What we can draw from this cutscene is that Turken's acting in society isn't exactly a rarity, and they are capable of fluent communication, that point in particular being very uncommon amongst our original list. Even side quests like Birds of a Feather reveal that the Turkans have a hierarchy of sorts with a countess and a king, and they can launch coordinated Trojan horse strikes. What? They even established a nation free from political ideologies and world governments known as Turkenlandia. It seems to be merely inhabited like the Igna did with the exiled Rumens, but the fact they attributed a name to the settlement is interesting. Turkan Cliff Colony in the Aleta region of Torna also shows another Turkan settlement in the form of what looks like a newly founded encampment. Regardless, both depictions show that the Turkan are capable of living in a very simple living quarters without any complex architecture. So with all of this Xenoblade Chronicles 2 information, how does it affect the Bionis Shoulder from the original? Well, considering the sizable jump in capabilities for Turkans between Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, it could be a possibility that they would like to echo that growth and development within the first game. The primary reason being that the small similarities between these games' creatures and beings would make all too much sense given Klaus's division between two worlds. However, the two strikes against Turkan I'd say are the size test and the formation of their settlements. Turkan can vary in size but generally come in between a Homs and a Hode, which makes me believe that they might not be the primary residents. Although, the biggest point of discussion is the way that Turkenlandia and the Cliff Colony are built, which is a drastic departure from the more complex architecture we find in the Bionis Shoulder. It seems they choose to live a modest life, which is the weirdest point to me since they can build fire and weapons, design a language and communicate with other races, form basic settlements with unique names, and domesticate creatures like Yana, putting them on a higher level than any other intelligent creature. Does this rule them out completely? Not at all, since we've already seen they've been prone to changes within the series, which is why I'm going to give them a gold star like the Hyentia. Now, Hodes in particular are an overlooked species from Xenoblade Chronicles that I think have a rather interesting design. They meet all the past requirements and even possess the skill to domesticate large creatures called Orlugas. What makes them an incredibly fascinating case is that they can be found in two areas, which are Magna Forest and Aerith Sea. Following my first rule, if you recall what I had mentioned earlier about the Bionis Shoulder, the area was found in the data to have the internal ID MA0801. Two IDs that surrounded that were Magna Forest and Aerith Sea. In the original release, it made sense that the Hode could be found in both of these locations that followed one another, but the existence of the Shoulder now throws a wrench in that logic. So if the Hodes were revealed to be the residents of the Bionis Shoulder, then it would allow for the sequential line to be unbroken. This is by no means a foolproof reason, but something I found perplexing and wanted to point out. Again, one of the arguments that could be made against the Hodes are their general size, not aligning with the scale of the Shoulder's buildings. Hodes come in at about half the size of Shulk, and most of the features like the doors and stands seem to be a bit big for their height. Yet that doesn't make this argument entirely foolproof either, because I've seen some large doors in my day, and Nopon have been seen living in settlements with larger creatures like Homs. But as much as I'd love for the Shoulder to introduce a bigger role for a sentient race, this setup seems more suitable for a larger species. Goodbye, my Jawa friends. Well, with all that, we are left with two races, the Homs and the Nopon. Just like all the previous contenders, both of the survivors exercise a higher intelligence as evident for the use of chain attacks, construction of weapons and armor, and the ability to express thoughts and ideas in a linguistic manner. They even live in a society, an environment that was built with their own hands and specifications in mind. As for the Homs, the size of the buildings and other variables seems to be properly scaled to them, and we can even see a lot of similar features like the merchant stands and large walls around the city seen in Colony 9 and 6 respectively. The construction of the buildings looks a lot messier than the industrialized constructions found in Colony 9 and 6, however this very likely could have been due to the resources available to these Homs or the number of capable individuals for building a settlement of similar caliber. It's even possible that this walled city could be the remnants of a once fought lost colony that has been slowly rebuilding ever since the defeat of the Mechon at the Battle of Sword Valley. There's a lot of potential to play with there. I know the main question might be why the Nopon are still remaining if they failed the size test like the Hodes. The answer is that we have seen Nopon and the customary human-like species coexist in society together not just in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but this title as well. Several Nopon could be seen in Colony 9 and 6, so it wouldn't be a shocker in the slightest if they shared the same lifestyle on the Shoulder. Another reason that Hodes got cut in addition to their size is because, to my knowledge, Xenoblade Chronicles has never shown Hodes and Homs coexisting to the same extent as Nopon and Homs. That would make for an awesome addition, but based off of prior knowledge, the pre-existing relationship seems more likely. It might seem like the most boring answer, but I really do think that the most likely conclusion is that the settlements found in the Bionis Shoulder were constructed by the Homs with Nopon merchants and travelers composing some of the population. While the city style seems pretty unique, it feels closer to a proto-version or counterpart of Colony 6 or 9 than that of Alchemoth, Frontier Village, or the remnants of the Giants. If I had to pick a more interesting and fun second possibility, then I would wager that Turken are the primary residents, given the high level of intelligence they exhibit for Xenoblade 1 and 2, as well as a presumed desire for Monolith Soft to want an even tighter connection between these entries. The architecture, although not representative of that inhabited by Xenoblade Chronicles 2's Turkens, feels distinct enough that it wouldn't be too far-fetched to consider a possible shakeup in the assumed formula. But I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts on the mysterious inhabitants of the Bionis Shoulder, so feel free to leave a comment down below and hopefully we can get some discussion going on. If you enjoyed the video and want to see future content on Xenoblade Chronicles leading up and after release, then I recommend subscribing. I am bonkers excited for this game, and I have some cool plans in store. As you guys might know, I usually try to put out a video every third Sunday, but I felt this one should come shortly after the last since they were both Bionis Shoulder related, and I worked on both scripts at the same time. Also, I want to give a big thanks again to OniLinkPlusLP and Solitude Freak for allowing me to use their footage of the Bionis Shoulder, as well as Rudra for joining me on this video, although I'm slightly concerned how Rudra and Kay keep hacking into my videos. Anyways, I'll leave the links to their channels down below and Rudra's Twitter, where you can check out his Xenoblade posts and character analyses, such as his most recent two-parter on the Aegis Girls. I think that takes care of everything for now, so thank you guys for watching, and until next time.